You who comes there, are you familiar with the World Cup curse? The tale goes that the winner of the World Cup is cursed with misfortune and failure in the following World Cup. Perhaps to win the ultimate prize, you must sacrifice future success. Or maybe, once you win the World Cup, you are cursed with losing a piece of your winning spirit. But I'm sure none of that is true. Or is it? Well, today we look at the alleged World Cup curse and the history as well as the facts. And furthermore, if such a curse exists, can the defending winners, France, overcome it this year in Qatar? It's actually quite symbolic that France is the country in question. Let me explain. The curse dates back 24 years to 1998 in France, when France won their first World Cup. This was one of the most celebrated happenings in French history, with over 1 million people storming down the Champs-Élysées. This victory was unifying for France and football as a whole, celebrating diversity and players with African descent being incorporated into the French team, including France's talisman, Zinedine Zidane. What would follow would shock everyone. France arrived at the World Cup in 2002 in South Korea and Japan as favorites and were drawn into a group which was expected to be easy for the French superstars, with names that I can't pronounce like Lilian Thuram, Thierry Henry, Marcel Desailly, and Zinedine Zidane. It's safe to say that big things are expected from Le Bleu. However, their opening game with Senegal marked embarrassment for the French, losing the game 0-1. This was all somewhat symbolic, as Senegal and France have historical ties, with some French players having Senegalese history. Next, France would fail to score once again against Uruguay, tying 0-0 in a frustrating game. The final test for France, the last chance they would get in this group, was against Denmark. France up until this point had to play without Zidane. He had sustained an injury in a friendly before the World Cup, but he returned for this game. But it wouldn't change the outcome. A 0-2 loss to Denmark. Remember this for later, the Danes will make another appearance later in this video. But alas, the rise and fall of France, champions in 1998 and mere participants in 2002, failing to pass the group stage, bottoming the group with no goals. No one could have predicted the void of goals, as Henry and Treguset were two of the favorites for the Golden Boot that year as well. The World Cup curse at this point might have been a joke at a bar, a fluke. Brazil won the World Cup in 2002. How would they do in 2006? Well, they got past the group stage, actually, and they crashed out in the quarterfinals that year. All rumors of a curse would be dismissed, right? And France is back on track too, being finalists of the 2006 World Cup, losing to Italy. So that was it then, no curse, and Italy went on to do great things as defending champions? Not really. Italy would be put in a group with Paraguay, Slovakia, and New Zealand. An easy-looking group, but these were some strong underdogs at the time. Italy might not have the best squad at the Cup, but they were strong favorites to win this group and make a decent run in the tournament. Italy tied 1-1 with Paraguay, 1-1 with New Zealand, and lost to Slovakia 3-2. They ended up last place in their group. They were just not good enough. Italy had lost some strong players, and their team was on the older side. With this exit, there began to be more grounds to a potential curse. What did these cursed World Cup winners have in common? Why were they failing? France also bottomed their group in 2010, and the issues after their 1998 win were starting to become clear. They had internal problems, disagreements, and a mixture of veterans and new players, and this exit was the culmination of all their problems. Let's gather some more evidence for this World Cup curse. The 2010 World Cup was won by Spain, a team to fear, as they had built a midfield to write home about, with Iniesta, Silva, Busquets, Xavi, Alonso, and the list goes on. The whole team was stacked, not to mention they won the Euros in 2008 and 2012. 2014 saw a very similar Spain team enter the World Cup in Brazil, and they got Australia, Chile, and the Netherlands in their group. It wasn't a simple group, but Spain were expected to get out of the group. But after the opening game, a 5-1 loss to Netherlands, the curse was in full swing, and in the second game, they lost to Chile 2-0, securing their exit. The squad that was winning trophies since 2008 had finally expired, it seems. At this point, people had accepted the possibility of a World Cup curse. But when Germany, the winners of the 2014 World Cup, arrived at the 2018 World Cup, people were certain that the World Cup curse would not faze this team. Germany had lost many grades in this 4-year period between 2014 and 2018, but they had adapted and grown new talent. They came to Russia an absolute favorite to win the whole thing, and when time came for the group stages, there was nobody talking about a curse. Germany had Mexico, Sweden, and South Korea in their group. In their first game, they were caught completely off guard by defensively aware Mexico, losing 1-0. Germany knew that they would have to be on their A game against Sweden, and they were, beating them 2-1 in an exciting game for neutrals. Now, Germany had quote-unquote secured their way out of the group with their last game being against South Korea. But oh, what a show would await us neutrals. A deadlock between South Korea and Germany resulted in German panic, as they saw that they could not qualify with just a draw. They started using desperate attacks, very unlike Germany, and they lost 2-0 to Korea, an embarrassing defeat which might be karma for their defilement of Brazil 4 years earlier. Germany, the defending champions and favorite for the double, had crashed out last in the group stage. The World Cup curse was no longer just talk. There were either some divine powers at B, or more likely, there is something that happens to a nation after winning the ultimate trophy, and the effects can be long-lasting. Every single World Cup champion since 1998 has failed in the group stage in the following World Cup, other than Brazil, making this seemingly a European thing. And now, the 2022 World Cup in Qatar is just around the corner, and all eyes are on France, the defending World Cup champions, which I have to say is a little ironic, no? And guess who's back? Denmark! Remember how I said to remember them? Well, they are in France's World Cup group alongside Tunisia and Australia. Let's take a closer look at if France, where the curse originated, could be the ones to break it. We're gonna look at 3 things for France. 1. Form. 2. Opposition. And 3. Similarities in World Cup curse teams. And then you guys can make up your mind as to if you think France could break the curse. First up, form. How is the French squad looking? France are coming to the World Cup with a very similar squad. Here's a side-by-side comparison between the World Cup final team and the squad in their most recent game against Denmark, a 2-0 loss. Lots of similarities in the attack, with a significant re-addition of Karim Benzema, who is expected to return to the squad for the World Cup. The defense seems to be under rotation, but that leads me into the recent form. This year, in the Nations League, they got into a group with Denmark, Croatia, and Austria, and of the 6 games, they managed to win just 1 against Austria. They suffered 2 losses against Denmark and 1 to Croatia. These were very recent results that indicate that France might not be in complete control, but this could be due to experimentation in the squad. They are trusting the squad with the same manager that won the World Cup in 2018, Didier Deschamps. Notable injuries and absences for France in the coming World Cup are N'Golo Kanté and Paul Pogba, 2 key midfielders in the winning squad in 2018. France, however, have incredible depth in the squad, which is one of the reasons why they are one of the favorites for the following World Cup in Qatar. Now, moving on to the second point, opposition, and I am itching to talk about Denmark. France have recently lost 2 games convincingly against this inspiring Danish squad, and I don't see that changing. The Danish have clearly figured out how to play against France, and I believe that they'll win this matchup. Next, we can touch on Australia, which is a side that might be just a little too weak. I believe they are similar to Denmark in spirit and their team chemistry, and they also don't have huge star players, but they have a group of 11 plus players that have nothing to lose. However, I think France should have a good grasp on Australia, probably winning this game. Lastly, the real decider, the one I believe to decide the fate of France, will be Tunisia. Now, on paper, France should breeze past Tunisia, but Tunisia has proven that they have no problem scoring a goal or 2 against any team, and this year they've held quite a few clean sheets as well, especially since their new manager has stepped in, that being Jalel Kadri, who believes that a more localized team playing locally in Tunisia can perform better. It still feels that it's a bit of a stretch that this side can pull an upset against France, but if they get lucky, they could play a long, drawn-out game that lands a 0-0 or a 0-1 with a potentially desperate France. So how could this play out? Let's say Denmark beats France and Australia and loses to an unfamiliar Tunisian side. Australia lose everything, which leaves the group at Denmark with 6, Tunisia with 6, France with 3, and Australia with 0, creating a similar situation to the one in 2018 for Germany, and now it's all down to France and Tunisia. France's last game out of 3 happens to actually beat Tunisia, and so France is left to play Tunisia to advance or fail. I can see it going both ways. I'll leave my official predictions for a different video. Lastly, point 3. Let's talk about some of the past World Cup cursed teams and how France looks compared to them. I'll keep it very brief. Rather than reading out all the stats for you, I put them on the screen right now, and I have to say I don't see much correlation if I'm being honest, but perhaps there's a trend of older players being chosen over younger players, which might be a factor. I am actually having a hard time figuring out what is going on with these teams 4 years after they win, and I don't have any conclusions as to this curse and why it happens, but that's where you guys come in. Let me know in the comments, is this curse thing real, and will the originator France break the curse in a little over a month's time? Let me know.